Morning students, a warm welcome to Sheba online class. This is our 11th day class. From the previous 10 classes, I hope that you would have understand the chapter whatever I thought. Okay, so now let us see this in the 11th chapter, the third chapter, theories of the employment and income. So in this you are going to learn about the aggregate demand and the components. Okay, what we are going to learn from this one? Aggregate demand and components. Aggregate demand means already I explained you that overall total whatever the demand it is there, that we are going to see in this chapter. Okay, is it clear? So in the Keynesian model, output is determined mainly by the aggregate demand. Means in the Keynesian that model, whatever he said, whatever the product, whatever he is produced, the output of it is determined mainly by the aggregate demand. I told you aggregate demand means demand whatever the situation, according to the situation only there may be demand for the particular product. Okay, is it clear? That one is mentioned here. Second part it is given about the aggregate demand is the amount of money which enterprise accept to get by selling the output produced by the number of laborers employed. Really, see, the aggregate demand means the demand whatever it is there, for that the product whatever we produce, for that money is required. So the total amount of money which enterprise means which is invested in the company, industries, whatever it is invested in that. Okay, that it is mentioned in the enterprise expect to get by selling the output. Means where there is demand, what is mentioned in this one, where there is the aggregate demand it is there, so they invest the money for the product which produced in the company, and they sell for the output means earn the money means the profit. So by selling the output by produced by the number of laborers employed. So if there is the aggregate demand, so if there is more demand, then we produce the more products, everything. So whatever you are producing the product, everything means the laborers are required. If there is more demand means more laborers will be employed. That means the more laborers will be getting the employment work, that is. Okay, that is mentioned in this second one. That means the aggregate demand is the amount of money which enterprise accept to get by selling the output produced by the number of laborers employed. Clear, children? That means there is more demand, so there is more demand, so the money is invested more in the industries, the product is produced more. So if the product we are producing means we need the person to produce that one, so the laborers are more we are taken, so because of that most of the laborers they get the employed. That is mentioned in this one. Okay, is it clear? Now let us see the third one. Aggregate demand has the following four components. Here I explained we are going to see about the aggregate demand and the components. This is the aggregate demands we saw, and now this one we are going to see about the components. In the components they are given about the four they are given. First one is that consumption demand. Consumption means consumer, we only, for us only the product whatever the produced. So the consumption demand means consumer whatever we are required, for that only they are going to produce. So consumption demand. Second one is that investment demand. Investment, how much to invest, how to invest, that everything it comes in the investment demand. Third one is that government expenditure. I told you in that how much the government is involved and how much they spend for it. Okay, and fourth one is that net export, that is export and import. Is it clear? These are the four components. Consumption demand, second one investment demand, third is government expenditure, and fourth one is net export and import. For that only they have given this one, that AD means that is aggregate demand is equal to C, consumption plus investment plus government. Is it clear, children? Aggregate demand is equal, AD means aggregate demand is equal to consumption plus investments plus government, plus in the bracket they have given about X minus M is export and import. Is it clear? AD is equal consumption plus investment plus government X minus M is equal export and import. Is it clear, children? So that only they are given as a diagram for the aggregate demand. So from here that 0 I already told you, whenever you draw the diagram means here you have to mention it as an X, here it is you have to mention Y, and here it is 0. Is it clear? So this line is it explain about the aggregate demand. Is it clear? Aggregate demand means I told you total whatever the demand it is there. So this is the employment, the labor which required they get the employment. So this line is mentioned there. From here we have given one line. What is it? We have drawn one, that is the aggregate demand. That means by using the employees we produce the demand, aggregate demand, whatever we produce, that it is given in this diagram. I hope children you would have understand this one clearly. Okay, now let us see about the comparison of classism and the Keynesianism. Means difference between these two. We have to compare the both. What is the difference between these two? Let us see. In the Keynesianism, what it is given? Short run equilibrium. But in classicum, what it is given? Long run. Keynesianism it is short run, and in the classicum it is given as the long run. And in this Keynes, service invoice, the function of money is medium of exchange on the one side and the store of value on the other side. Then macro approach to the national problem, state invention is adopted, applicable to all situations, full employment and less than full employment. So capitalism has inherent, and budgeting should be adjusted to the requirement of economy. And the equal between saving and investment is advanced through changes in income. Rate of interest is determined by the demand for the supply and money. Rate of interest is flow. Demand creates its own supply. Rate of interest is reward for the parting with the liquidity. Means this all it is mentioned in the Keynesianism. Means what it is given in this, it is a short run equilibrium, and in this serving is wise, and then the function of the money means the exchange is one side to another side, it is store of value only. Then micro approach is to the national approach it is given, and then state inversion is advocated. But in the classicum what way it is given? Keynes is short and classicum it is given the long run. Clear? And here serving is wise given, but in this classicum it is serving is a social ritual it is given. Okay, now here it is wise given, but in this one it is the social ritual. And here function of exchange to one side, the store of value on the other side. But in the classicum what it is given, the function of money acts as the medium of the exchange. It is given the medium of the exchange only it is given. So here macro approach to the national problem, but here micro foundation to the macro problem. Micro means what I told you, small. Macro means large. So that micro foundation means small foundation to the macro problems means large problems, everything it comes in the classicum theory. Okay. Then here state inversion is adopted, but here it is not like that. Okay, so here it is capitalism as inherent controversy, but here capitalism is well and good. Which one? In classicum it is capital it is well and good. Is it clear, children? And here rate of determined is determined by the demand for supply and money it is given. In which? In Keynes theory. But in the classicum theory it is given rate of interest is determined by saving and investment. By saving and then in that investment means, for example, if you earn 20,000, you spend 15,000 and 5,000 you miss keeping as an saving, that it is mentioned here. So the rate of interest is determined by the saving and investment, and here in that Keynes theory rate of interest is in flow, but in classicum theory it is given rate of interest is a stock, that means it is not in flow, not in running, it is in a stock. So here determinant creates its own supply. In which one? In Keynes theory demand it creates its own supply. If there is demand, they own their supply, whatever the product demand it is there. But in classicum it is not like that. Supply only creates its own demand. Here demand comes in which one? In Keynes theory first demand irundha mattum dhaan anga supply endra mari varum, but in classicum theory it is not like that. In this supply creates its own demand. Supply irukku naraiya apram dhaan adu demand, adukku aprama adu you produce that product, everything like that. Okay, so rate of interest is a reward for parting with the liquidity. In which one? In Keynes theory. But in classical it is not like that. Rate of interest is a reward for saving. Means more there will be product and the saving will be more. That is the comparison between the, we saw this one, classicum and the Keynesium we saw. That only it is mentioned in this chapter. Okay, now let us see the next one. Okay, now let us see about the full employment and unemployment. Okay, so what is the difference between the full employment and the unemployment? In full employment, person who are willing to work, means they are willing to work and they are able also to work, they must have employment or a job. Means full employment it is mentioned that a person who is willing, means he is willing to work, he is interested in work and he is able also, means he can do that work, he is able to do that work also, he must have employment or a job. Real no children? Means those who are willing to work and they are able to work, means they must get a employment, they must get a work, a job. Is it clear? That is mentioned in the full employment. Okay, so unemployment. What is unemployment? When there are people who are willing to work and able to work but cannot find a suitable job. Clear? In full employment, people is willing to work and able to work, they must have employment or a job it is given. Means they have the employment or job. Is it clear? But here unemployment means this, in the same way the people are able to, means they are willing to work and they are able to work also, but they cannot find a suitable job. Is it clear? They are able also, they are willing also, but they can't find a suitable job to work. That is known as the unemployment. Understood children? Full employment means the person are willing to work and able to work and they have employment and they get their job. Is it clear? That is full employment. Unemployment means the person they are willing to work and able to work but they cannot get a suitable job to work. That is the difference between the full employment and the unemployment. Okay. Okay children, we saw the full employment and unemployment. Now let us see about the underemployment. What is the underemployment? Resources. Resources means here it is given example about the labor. So are not fully utilized in production. Means whatever the produce, the product, everything, that is production. So the labors, the resources means here it is given about the labors. So this labor is not fully utilized. Not fully utilized means not fully used in the production. Is it clear children? That means resources, it is mentioned about the labor, they are not fully utilized in the production. Whatever the produce, the product, everything, the labors are not fully utilized, not fully used. Is it clear? That comes in the underemployment. Is it clear? Now let us see about the effective demand. What is the effective demand? The amount of money which entrepreneurs expect to get by the output production. That means whatever the money it is invested in the entrepreneurs, means in the industries, the main motto is to get the output. What is the output of the product? Means by selling they must get the profit, everything. That is the output of the product. That is given about the effective demand. Clear? Now aggregate demand it is given. So what is the aggregate demand? The amount that household, firms, the government and the foreign purchase would like to spend on domestic output. That means the amount that household, means whatever we use in the houses, maybe the vessels, maybe the means whatever, maybe the provisions, that everything it comes in the household only. Okay, firms means I told you industries, the investment in the industries, the government and the foreign purchases. Yes, whatever we produced here, that it won't get in the foreign countries, everything. So they used to purchase from our places, means from here. That is that through import and the export I explained you. So all these would like to spend on the domestic only. Aggregate demands everything come to spend the money, everything in the domestic product only. Okay, so that is the output of this aggregate demand. Now let us see about the aggregate supply. So what is the aggregate supply? the value of the total output of the goods and service produced in an economy in a year. That means aggregate supply, they are given the time. That means the value of the total output, whatever they put the output for the goods and the services, that it is produced in an economy within a 1 year. They have given the time, limitation of the time, that means within the 1 year. The value of total output of goods and service produced in an economy, means total whatever it is within the 1 year. Clear children? That it is mentioned in the aggregate supply. Now money supply. So what is the money supply? The total stock of money circulating in an economy. I told you, miss, if you have 5 rupees, if you purchase one thing, I explained you, if you purchase a book, then the book, what will the book shop, what will he do? The owner, he will spend the 500 rupees for something else. Then from that 500 rupees, if he purchase one sweets, something, whatever if it is, then the sweet shop will keep the money like that itself. He would go and purchase some materials for that, whatever is required to prepare for the sweets, everything. So the same way the money is the rotation, that means circulation. That is given the example of this money supply. The total stock of the money circulate in an economy, that is mentioned. Okay, now let us recall this one. Whatever we saw about the underemployment we saw, then effective demand we saw, then aggregate demand we saw, then aggregate supply, and then money supply. So this everything we saw in this chapter. Okay children? Okay children, I hope you would have understand today's class, whatever I taught you. And one more request to you all, send your homework everything properly and regularly, and your presentation, it should be very good. Okay children, thank you.